Hey everybody, good morning. Welcome to my Instagram Live. I'll be waiting for my dear friend and brother, Dr. Bob Hurried, to join in a moment. One of the smartest biologists and cellular medicine pioneers on the planet. So we're going to be talking about hope and excitement and therapeutics and the cutting edge of biology with Dr. Hurried. And a pleasure to have everybody joining me right now. I'm in Santa Monica. Dr. Hurried is in New Jersey and will be broadcasting with us from the new facilities that Cellularity has built. Let me begin by saying I hope everybody is safe and really taking advantage of this time. All right, waiting for Dr. Hurried to ask to join me, and then we'll be all set to go. One of the things that is extraordinary here is what we're going to talk about, which is the benefits of the incredible organ called the human placenta. And Bob is trying to join. I see that, Bob. And Talia can support you on that. But one of the things that is extraordinary is this organ called the human placenta. My father was an OBGYN. He delivered, I think my estimate was 30,000 babies during the course of his life. And he was, one day he brought home a placenta and showed me this organ with a very smooth side that faces the embryo and a very rough side that is the maternal side. And he used to tell me that placentas were used in old times, were placed on men's heads. There is Dr. Hurried's sent a request. View. Request add. Okay. We should have Bob here in 1 microsecond. Used to be put on people's bald heads to try and help them get their hair to grow. And there might be some things. Hey, Bob. Good morning, pal. Can you hear me? Let's make sure your audio is on. Bob, you may need to send a request again. There we go. Let's see. Here's a request. Here we go. Bob, let's add you. I so wish we were in the same room doing this together, but there we go. Hey, buddy. Good morning.
Hey, how are you?
Good, pal. So, everybody, let me take a second to introduce an incredible MD, PhD, scientist, engineer, entrepreneur, pilot extraordinaire, Dr. Bob Hurried. Bob, good morning. So I want to jump straight into it, and I'll come back to your background in the background of cellularity. But people are concerned that if people get on a ventilator, if people get severely ill, what are the therapies? Is it a death sentence and so forth? A lot of people are recovering, but one of the things I think is important to realize is that when people get severely ill with coronavirus or with cancer or with any kind of viral infection, it is a failure of their immune system to keep up with the loads. And what you've been pioneering, and the entire science team at Cellularity, is, and you coined the phrase, augmenting your immunity. So can you talk about sort of that whole element there, and then let's get to natural killer cells and COVID-19.
Sure. So I know everybody out there is panicking because there's a lot of mixed messages out there about COVID-19. There's a lot of confusion about what might be predictive of you not doing well. And there's even confusion about what tests to use to determine whether your cough is from COVID or from the flu or whatnot. And you point out a very, very important element to all of this, which is that not everybody who gets exposed to COVID gets infected with COVID. And not everybody who gets infected with COVID develops serious illness. The vast majority of people who get infected with COVID-19 will experience symptoms that are not too different from what they've experienced earlier in their lives during a flu or some other bad viral illness. They may get some headaches, some fever, some cough. Most often they don't get sinus symptoms like runny nose, but they'll get a lot of symptoms of kind of the general malaise of having a viral illness. A small percentage of those who get infected, roughly 5%, 5 to 7%, will start getting really ill, feeling like they're having difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, high fevers, and generally feeling kind of what we call toxic. Those patients are going to go out and seek health care. They're going to seek medical care. They'll go to emergency rooms. They'll call their doctor or whatnot. If they're confirmed by testing to actually be infected with COVID, they're going to be monitored for declining pulmonary function and the other bad consequences of the disease, such as evidence of cardiovascular problems where their blood pressure is difficult to maintain, or fevers that are so high that they're dangerous. Now, what this all talks about is how the disease will affect different people and how it develops in stages. How disease affects people differently is really a function of, I believe, the amount of virus they were exposed to and inoculated with, because there is a quantitative element to this, the time since that inoculation, and their general resistance to infectious disease. So, Peter, you pointed it out. We've been paying attention to this for a long time. The immune system of every individual is the first line and the last line of defense against viral illness. It's funny how our immune system reacts to viral infections. The first player that gets turned on in response to a viral infection is a component of what we call the innate immune system, called the natural killer cell. That natural killer cell actually specifically identifies and targets virally infected cells, and its job is to reduce the amount of virus by going after virally infected cells and killing them before they leave more virus in the system. Now, what that natural killer cell spike does is it's attempting to suppress or reduce the viral burden a patient has so that the patient's adaptive immune system can get a jump start and begin to rise and then control the viral infection in a more durable way. So, everybody's heard of this flattening the curve concept, right? The CDC and NIH have come up with a concept that in order to not overtax our healthcare system, which would be a disaster if we had too many people and too few beds and too few ventilators. And their approach is to create social distance and reduce exposures so that we don't rise above that limit, that burden, that operating limit of the healthcare system. Well, our approach is to find tools that can be used to augment the immune system so that it does a better job preventing viral loads to rise above a threshold, create symptoms, and overwhelm the patient's immune system. And that's what we do with our natural killer cell product.
So one of the things that is clear, and I want people to hear this, why the data is so exciting, is that young people are not getting the disease in any significant amount, and older people are being over.
Young people are getting the disease. Okay,
they're getting the disease, Val, but the mortality rate is extremely low as compared to older people.
Yeah, but can we talk about that for a second? Because people panic about the data they're getting. By the way, everybody, you got to realize data is important for decision making. Data is also highly subject to manipulation. Okay, so you've heard that the reason we're scared about COVID-19 is the death rate looks like it's 10 times higher than the seasonal flu. Okay, now the way they're determining death rate is they're taking the total number of patients who die and dividing it by the total number of patients they determine to be COVID-19 positive, okay? That's not necessarily everybody who's not really. What does that
Yeah.
really mean? It means that social distancing is a great early defense mechanism. But the thrust for us has to be in identifying therapies to treat the disease and reduce the lethality of it and reduce the duration patients are contagious. That's what we need to do.
Bob, can you speak to the treatment that Cellularity is developing of actually out of placentas, separating natural killer cells, expanding that, and then transfusing it into an individual? And then once it's in a person, what do those natural killer cells do?
So, if I throw a graph up, would people be able to see it?
Depends.
I'm going to try and find
how well you throw it up. But let's just discuss 1 second. So natural killer cells are in placentas, and they protect the fetus from colds, viral infections, and they help a mother who's carrying a baby carry that baby without any issues.
So let's talk about that. That's really important, right? The developing fetus and its placenta constitute a composite individual that has a really remarkable immune system that protects it at all costs. The placenta is a life support system. If you think about it, every human mother contributes 9 months of reproductive energy to one offspring, right? So evolution has selected for a system that protects the fetus and the newborn at all costs, because every lost newborn is a less chance to continue to populate the planet. And so the placenta has evolved these remarkable mechanisms. First of all, mechanisms to exist in an unmatched recipient for 9 months without rejecting it, but also to protect it from any transfer of illness from the mother to the developing fetus. Among those things, the placenta has an immune system which is a good defense against maternal transfer of cancer cells and viral illnesses. And it turns out that for a lot of cases, the placenta has the ability to leave the newborn fetus with enough of these unique natural killer cells that it actually protects it in postpartum life, so that it goes from a sterile bubble in the womb to an ambient environment where there's pathogens everywhere, right? You know, the newborn in the savannah of Africa lands on the ground and is exposed to viruses and bacteria and fungus and all types of pathogens, but death from infectious diseases is not common in newborns. That's because, and we discovered this, the placenta houses a very unique natural killer cell, and this placental natural killer cell is a great defense against those serious infectious diseases. So we decided to take that cell and isolate, characterize it, and then mass produce it. And that's the product that we have taken into the treatment of cancer, and we've seen very, very promising evidence of great safety and tolerability, as well as evidence that it actually helps protect against protecting the fight against cancer. Now, when COVID-19 erupted, we said, well, the same biological properties that make that cell useful to protect against cancer also could be useful to protect against viral illness. Why not develop the product as an immunosupporting product to enhance the defense against, for example, COVID-19? And that's what we have developed. That's what we filed an IND with the FDA. And we're going to study this. And hopefully in our clinical trial, we'll be able to demonstrate that CYNK001, our product, our candidate product, in clinical trials is both safe and effective and can be used to augment a patient's immune response to COVID-19.
So what happens, you have this cryopreserved bag, if you would, like a bag of saline, but it's got a bag of natural killer cells in it. And the cells from the placenta can be given to anyone without an immune reaction. That's one benefit that we can talk about. But the natural killer cells enter your intravenous system, and they're targeting in the lung viral infected cells.
So they are targeting the markers that get expressed on virally infected cells that are called stress antigens. So it turns out that when a virus first enters a cell, the cell tries to respond, and one of the ways it tries to respond is to turn on the expression of these molecules on the surface that are called stress antigens. Natural killer cells specifically identify and target those stress antigens.
Amazing. And how long do these natural killer cells survive in the body? Do we have an idea when they're transfused?
So, in our work, we think that these NK cells will last up to 2 weeks, perhaps as long as 30 days, but they don't have to last that long. Now I'm going to try and show you my graph. Okay. Yep. I wonder if you can see that, if everybody can see that. So
yeah.
What that graph shows is it shows the green line is the rise and spike of natural killer cells. The red line is the rise and spike of the viral titer, and then I believe it's a blue line is what we call the cytotoxic T lymphocyte line. And what you see there is the natural sequence of events after viral infection. The virus starts to rise. It stimulates the up production and release of natural killer cells, and then those natural killer cells top off the viral load, and then the virus starts to decline when the adaptive immune system, the cytotoxic T lymphocytes, start to rise. And when they rise, they create a durable response that keeps the virus away.
And so now the goal is in young kids, you have a large supply of natural killer cells that are active, but as you grow older, the number of cells reduce in their amount and functionality?
So it's actually interesting. The data actually indicates that natural killer cell numbers don't necessarily change all that much between youth and old age, but the quality of the natural killer cells changes dramatically. And the effectiveness and efficiency of natural killer cells in the older population is pretty significantly reduced. Now, the other compelling reason why we think NK cells are so important here is that after the SARS outbreak of about 15, 20 years ago, which killed several thousand people, okay, those SARS patients were infected with another type of coronavirus, okay? One might say the older brother of this coronavirus. Those patients who did poorly, there was a study commissioned by the Chinese government called the SARS Research Group out of Beijing. They actually studied the patients who did poorly and died, or did poorly and had long-term bad outcomes. And what they found was a common denominator was that the patients who did poorly all had defective or deficient natural killer cells. Okay? That's an important observation. But I'm here to tell you that although we didn't have until just recently any data on what happens in COVID-19, this paper just came out. Okay, this paper just got published on March 7th. It is studying the number of active immune cells in patients with COVID-19, and the paper is titled "Functional Exhaustion of Antiviral Lymphocytes in COVID-19." And what this paper showed was that the virus literally burns out your immune system. And one of the first things it burns out is your natural killer cells.
Yeah, so this is a concept called immune system exhaustion. And the challenge is, as you get older, you've got viruses you might have in your body, herpes or CMV or a whole slew of other viruses, and the flu, and you have cancer challenges. And so your immune system is just being overloaded. And the question of, can you augment it? A couple of questions that are coming in, Bob, here. We filed for IND roughly when, and when do we hope to have approval to put natural killer cells into humans?
So our IND was filed, I think 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks ago, and we are in discussion with the FDA, and we're hoping to have an answer and permission to start treating patients right away. We're literally waiting for it as we speak.
So we're excited about that. How many patients will we go into in humans once we have the IND approved?
So the first part of the study,
IND stands for
investigational new drug application. So,
yes.
So the FDA does a great job in holding investigators to demonstrate the safety and the rationale for using an experimental product, and then they review it. They review the protocol, the measures being taken to monitor and document the data, and analyze and review the safety. And when you meet that threshold, the FDA allows you to begin to treat patients in a clinical trial.
And so our first early tests might be in 100 patients, 50 patients. What are your hopes?
I would say 50 to 100 patients will be our early experience.
And one thing that's important is that these natural killer cells that Cellularity has developed are already in humans very safely for treating multiple myeloma and other cancers, right?
So this is a product that's already got human safety experience. We've been treating patients with 2 types of hematologic cancers, and we've been very, very happy with the safety profile of the product. Patients tolerated it well, and these are sick patients to begin with. And the FDA has granted us permission to treat patients with solid tumors after we filed another IND to treat first brain cancer, and then eventually we'll move on to other solid tumors. So this is not a novel, never tried therapeutic. This is one that has experience in humans.
So one of the questions that came from one of our viewers here, it says, with placental banking, are you limited to the number of cells banked, or can the bank cells be used to create more natural killer cells? So, you know, both my boys were banked with Life Bank USA, and what's the opportunity there?
It's a great question. So first and foremost, all we need from the cells banked from placenta is the starting material, the stem cells that give rise to the hematopoietic system, and then we cultivate and expand and differentiate those cells into natural killer cells. So for people who've had cells banked away for their children, depending upon the service and the methodology they use, those cells could in fact serve as the starting material for your own customized immunotherapeutic. But here's the really good thing. These cells that we're producing right now are one size fits all. So we don't necessarily have to use your cells for a therapeutic, because the cells we manufacture from donor placentas can be used in anybody. And the beauty is that our model is to put these cells on the shelf, okay, inventoried at the treatment sites, so that unlike having your own cells engineered, which takes time, these would be available immediately.
Right. One of the questions asking is, can you send a link to the paper? Can you just mention the name of the paper if people could do a PubMed search on that?
Well, the paper that just came out is Functional Exhaustion of Antiviral Lymphocytes in COVID-19 patients. And that just got published on the 7th of March in Cellular and Molecular Immunology. And then there is another great paper, which I will quote for you in a second here.
I think one of the things that's really important to realize here, guys, is we're learning so much right now about the human immune system. The immune system is an extraordinary, incredibly complicated process. Your body is constantly creating cancers that your immune system finds and shuts down. It's only when your immune system becomes overloaded that you develop the cancer. We also have many viral challenges in our body all the time that our immune system has to constantly be battling and fighting back. And so one of the things that is super exciting right now is, besides vaccines and antivirals, is this idea of being able to supercharge and augment your immune system. You've heard about this with CAR T therapies, chimeric antigen receptor T cells that are super expensive. There's a CAR T version for placental T cells and a CAR NK version for natural killer cells that Bob and his team have been pioneering at Cellularity as well.
So Peter, one of the things I want to point out is, these viral outbreaks are, they're a call to action, right? I mean, they get you all excited and everybody wants to jump in, and there's a lot of panic around them and so on. But the truth is that we are at a point in our history where the development of biological tools in the form of cell therapy is now part of the mainstream. And the beauty of being able to develop kind of a one-size-fits-all, all-comers antiviral therapy in the form of a placental natural killer cell that can be stored in cryopreservation. And cryopreservation means that these products have shelf lives that's measured in decades. This is a really good investment, okay?
Yeah.
It's a really good investment because you never know what's going to happen next year, the year after, and so on. By the way, a lot of people hear speculation that this particular virus is acting and behaving in an unusual way, right? You've heard speculation that it's an engineered virus, that it's potentially a biowarfare agent. The bottom line is that viruses are unpredictable. And if you have a mutation in this virus, that things may quiet down here between now and the summer, right? The numbers may drop and people are going to say, everything's great. And then all of a sudden, in October, November, we get another spike. The spike might not be the same virus. It might be a mutated version of this virus. So a lot of strategies to develop specific antivirals may not work in the next version of the antiviral. Joshua Lederberg was a brilliant immunologist and microbiologist, and he was the president of Rockefeller University back when I was a student, and I got to know him, and he's the guy who was the inspiration behind the book Hot Zone. Anybody want to read a good book? Read the book Hot Zone or watch the movie Outbreak, because what that actually illustrates is that something that scares the hell out of you, okay, a virus like COVID, could be a lot scarier if it mutated into a more virulent form.
I call what's going on today our practice pandemic. It's like getting everybody, aware. We're finding out all of the problem spots, from ventilators to masks to the fact that that companies are not being properly funded, and what was sort of the villain of pharmas are the heroes. I had a Instagram Live the other day, Bob, with a mutual friend, Dr. David Sinclair, and we're talking about the idea that there's a Air Force, a Navy, an Army, a Space Force. There needs to be a Bioforce as well, supporting this stuff, because that's the real, the real global enemy is one of these things.
You're making a good point, but here's the thing, right? We have a lot of those forces, right? We have the CDC, we have the NIH, we have the HHS, we have a lot of agencies. The problem is, okay, what you want is a bioresponse force that behaves like the military, okay? That actually is highly adaptive, and when the balloon goes up, it's all hands on deck, and you do everything to suppress the threat. Okay, you don't sit around and debate it. Okay, one of the things which will cause problems is when the failure to act, even when directionally the action may not be ideal, you gotta act. You can't sit back and wait for things to go on their own course, because half of the time it's going to go on the wrong course.
Just to mention some of the amazing people, our chief scientist, Shockwave, who's doing extraordinary work. Bob, you built an amazing board. I'm very proud to be vice chairman. I'm also co-vice chairman along with John Scully. You guys might remember John Scully was head of PepsiCo and the CEO of Apple. He's now vice chairman alongside me of Cellularity. Andy Pecora, Andy von Eschenbach, who was the head of the FDA a few administrations back, Robin Smith, and a few others. So we built a rock star. People are asked, how can I invest in Cellularity? It's pre-public. The company may be public in the next year or so, but So unfortunately, right now, until that is done, the company, unless it's a large scale investment, is really is a private closed company. How is the FDA doing in this situation, Bob? How are you feeling? You're plugged in at the highest levels with the administration and the FDA right now. How are they doing in this response?
You know what? I think everybody is really doing everything that they know how to contribute to solutions. But remember, not everybody has the right skill set to respond to an emergency. Okay, and let me just spend a second on that. You know, I know a lot of great surgeons. Okay. An ophthalmologic surgeon ain't the guy I want when I come in after a motor vehicle accident with my spleen ruptured, okay? So even though he's a surgeon, he doesn't have the skill set to be effective, right? One of the reasons I was a trauma surgeon is, you know, trauma surgeons, basically, you never have the same problem twice. It's always different, and you have to be able to improvise, adapt, overcome. In this particular situation, we have a lot of world-class subject matter experts and professionals in different roles and agencies and so on. Not all of them are equipped to act the same way and act in partnership to speed the solutions to patients with this disease. That's troubling, okay? You know me, Peter, I hate to talk about politics, right?
Well, let's not talk about politics, but let's just...
We're not going to talk about politics.
Yeah.
But there is a demand here for alignment, collaboration, and cooperation, and the FDA is working hard to help, and they're working hard to speed things through. They've probably seen more applications for investigational products than they've seen at any one time in the past. They're being heroic about it, but again, a lot of these walls have got to be broken down. Remember, after 9/11. What did the 9/11 Commission say? The 9/11 Commission said that they've never seen a more disengaged, non-cooperative, and non-partnering group of agencies ever assembled, right? Law enforcement agencies weren't working with the military, they weren't working with intelligence agencies. I think that same problem's happening here a little bit. It's better, but we still need much better cooperation, and we still need much greater support in the terms of financial resources and other general human resources.
So Bob, one question that came over is, could natural killer cells infusions be done prophylactically? Do you imagine as we get older, eventually so one of the businesses that we are in together is the stem cell business, where a number of people go and get stem cell treatments every once a year, every 6 months. Do you imagine that we're going to start to see people getting their immune system augmented like that?
So, you know, I'm convinced that there's going to be an increasing role, and there's always a justification for boosting or supporting your own endogenous abilities to mount a response to illness, disease, stress, aging, etc. The easiest place to get that response is in the form of cells that can be given allogeneically, which means one size fits all, and that you can take serially over and over and over again. You and I have friends, Peter, who go for their regular treatments of stem cells, and now there's an increasing number who are going to be going for, I bet, immune augmenting cells. Over time, the regulatory world is going to find a way to allow these in a controlled, systematic, high quality way. But there's no doubt in my mind the best way to restore your regenerative engine is to charge it up with new cells.
I agree. I agree very much. We're getting a bunch more questions coming in on the live feed over here. So how is Sorrento contributing to the NK therapy?
So Sorrento is a strategic partner. They have made available to us as needed cell manufacturing capabilities so that we can we can increase the yield, the number of doses that are being produced. Sorrento's got a lot of great technology around antibodies, and I believe that when we identify some discrete markers on the COVID target, that will be a way to engineer immune cells to specifically hunt down the virus. And Sorrento is in a very good position to be a big contributor here. I saw one of the questions is, when can I get a haircut again? You know what? Listen, I had to break out my Flowbee again, so it's a problem.
Well, Bob, listen, I wanted to give the community here an update on what's going on, and one therapy that they don't think about, which is, we talk about sort of, and I'll say this for everybody, that keeping a healthy immune system means sleeping right, exercising, meditating, all those things, de-stressing the body, eating right as well. But there's a new idea here that's on the horizon. Really, Bob is the father of this, as the chairman, CEO, and really a cellular medicine god, is how do you augment your immune system, which is really take young immune cells that your body doesn't reject and be able to bring them in and support you in your time of need.
Yeah, I think we are soon going to be able to administer cells on a regular basis of high quality that will, just as you said, augment our immune capabilities, our regenerative capabilities, and so on. I think that everyone out there has to engage in the dialogue, right? You got to go and demand that that healthcare systems and your representatives pave the way to accelerate progress in this field. I'll be honest, we're all frustrated. A lot of great developmental therapeutics take a long time to get to patients, and we got to fix that.
Yeah. Well, Bob, listen, this has been a great chance to share with the community. Thank you for that. I love the lines coming in. Thanks, Bob. Bob, you're the best, and you're an asset to everybody. And thank you for the work that you're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and wish everybody a wonderful day wherever you are. Be safe, and please make sure that the pandemic of fear is not worse for you than the pandemic of the virus. Keep the faith. I think we have a amazing convergence of cures, vaccines, therapeutics that are coming. I wanted to share this one with you because I'm very proud of the work that Bob and Shockwave and the whole team is doing. So, Bob, thank you, pal.
No, thanks for having me, Peter. Good to see you.
Be well. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.